Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, HISUIAN DECIDUEYE. HISUIAN DECIDUEYE can be encountered via doing 3-star raids either in person or remotely during its raid day. As for the Pokemon, it's going to be a grass and fighting type Pokemon with the moveset of Psycho Cut, Aerial Ace, and Aura Sphere, so it does have lightning fast energy generation and some pretty interesting coverage. Now today, I'm going to be testing it out in some practice Open Ultra League battles since it's not eligible for the Evolution Cup. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Hopping to the first match, picking up a pretty solid lead, Shadow Dragonite into Skeledirge. I am running a variation of a pretty popular Ultra League team, but instead of HISUIAN, I am running the Pokemon that shares its typing, but very different moves, the HISUIAN Decidueye. My opponent is going to be shielding up the Dragon Claw as they're one Incinerate away from the back-to-back. But due to throwing on good charge attack timing on the first one, I am able to outpace and make it to a second Dragon Claw. This, however, does not knock out, so I'm going to switch into the Registeel to absorb this energy. Let's see, did the opponent blind Shadow Ball? No, they went for the Disarming Voice, and now they're going to send in a Shadow Gliscor. This is honestly pretty okay for me. I get to bait out the Gliscor, which of course would be a pretty big problem for the HISUIAN Decidueye, and with the energy advantage, I'm able to apply a Zap Cannon and get a debuff as well, which is quite nice. Registeel can typically outpace anyway, but in this situation, having the energy advantage does guarantee that fact. I'm firing off another Zap Cannon, the Zap Cannon is going to connect, and I get another debuff. My opponent probably could not KO with a Night Slash now. They're going to have to go for an Earthquake. And my opponent is going to do exactly that. In comes the Dragonite, and the opponent is going to get farmed down. In the back, it's a Shadow Poliwrath, and I should be looking in a pretty good position here. I can fire off the Superpower. This does a lot of damage, so the opponent commits the shield, and in comes HISUIAN Decidueye. Icy Wind will hit for super effective damage, so I am going to commit the shield. I just have to watch for a catch. So I'm going to farm up with the Decidueye. Opponent goes for the catch onto the Skeledirge. I leave with a back-to-back Aerial Aces, but I accidentally overtap and play to a CMP tie. Now that's a bit unfortunate, as HISUIAN Decidueye does not get same type attack bonus on Aerial Ace, which means that it does not do a whole lot of damage. But the good news is, HISUIAN Decidueye is able to absorb the Icy Wind and fire off the second Aerial Ace that is going to pick up the knockout onto the Poliwrath. Hopping to the first match, picking up a slightly negative lead, Shadow Dragonite into Tentacruel. Now, Tentacruel, as long as it doesn't commit a shield, does have the ability to force either a shield advantage or switch advantage, so this is not a great spot to be the Dragonite. Opponent is going to no shield, they're farming up energy to the Blizzard, and they don't throw it. They save switch into Greedent, so I have to keep in mind they have so much energy on the Tentacruel, but now I fire off the Superpower, it connects, and in comes HISUIAN Decidueye. They're forced to go for body slams here. Going for a crunch wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, as of course, they would be throwing a resisted charge attack, and I do get a little bit of distance from all the pacing that I'm doing during these battles, so let's go. Alright, I'm farming up, going for the Aerial Ace on charge attack priority. This will comfortably pick up the knockout. They do have a lot of energy on the Tenta. In comes the Tenta, and I'm going for the resisted Aura Sphere. It's resisted, but it will do more overall damage, as it's just a significantly stronger base damage move. My opponent is going to be firing off the Scald. Scald, not going to be enough to KO after the undercharge. I send in the Shadow Dragonite, and in the back, it's a Guzzlord. Full sending the Superpower, it connects, and from here, this is just a win. I'm going to be able to send in the Registeel, and Registeel will comfortably be able to handle the Guzzlord. Guzzlord, definitely one of my favorite Pokemon, so this is a little bit of a sad moment for me, as Guzzlord is going to probably get knocked out here by the Focus Blast if they elect to let it go, which they do. They understand at this point they just don't have a win con, so they're just not going to shield. They can fire off the Scald. My switch clock will be up soon. I'm going to try and go for a Psycho Cut down with the Decidueye, but the one-turn switch means that will not happen. But one lock-on from the Registeel takes the win. Moving into the next match, leading Shadow Dragonite into Gliscor. Opponent is going to save switch into Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini, not the greatest matchup ever into Dragonite, because I'm able to farm up so much energy and then send in the Registeel, and that energy will hopefully be useful later on in the match. My opponent, since I didn't get the Moonblast catch, can fire off Surf after Surf, but honestly I'm pretty okay with that. Registeel is here on the team to absorb damage. I'm firing off the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon is going to do a solid amount of damage onto the Tapu Fini, and it does pick up the knockout. Back in comes the Gliscor. Gliscor farming up energy. Registeel will be able to make it to the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon not going to KO by any means. This is a non-Shadow Gliscor, and it's a resistant move, but it still does some okay damage. They're forced to go for an Earthquake here, as a Night Slash won't do nearly enough, and now I can send in the Dragonite. Dragonite will fire off the Dragon Claw. Meant to throw one Dragon Breath in the move there, but it looks like it did end up being Charge Attack priority. But a debuffed Night Slash is not threatening to Dragonite whatsoever, so I am going to let that through and look for the farm down. Opponent trying to make it to one final Charge Attack, but they do not get there. In the back, it's Swampert, and I should be in the driver's seat in this match. HISUIAN Decidueye being the grass and fighting type, you would think that it does typically run a grass charge attack, but its best recommended moveset is actually the Aerial Ace and Aura Sphere, so you're a grass type that runs no grass moves. You do have the ability, I believe it has the fast attack Magical Leaf, and you can also run Trailblaze or Energy Ball, but typically Aura Sphere is going to be preferred just because Aura Sphere does provide some very nice coverage. My opponent, no shield of the first move, so I was able to land the Aura Sphere, and now they're going to start shielding Aerial Aces. Unfortunately, non-stab Psycho Cut just does absolutely nothing. Like, you're never going to be able to farm anything down with HISUIAN Decidueye. I'm able to grab the shield with the Aerial Ace and combo play with the Shadow Dragonite, and Shadow Dragonite is going to secure that victory. Moving into the next match, we see an incredibly tough core breaker, Shadow Dragonite into Alolan Sandslash. I typically like to catch on 6, so I'm a bit caught off guard when they just throw the Ice Punch right away. It's a pretty nice strategy from the opponent, understanding when I like to catch and just throwing at a different time. I go for the Dragon Claw bait, I'm able to get the shield, my opponent is throwing their energy as soon as they get it. If they do this for the third one, I can take advantage of this tendency and go for a catch. I continue to farm up with the Dragonite, going for another bait, and again, another shield from my opponent. I farm up the switch into the Registeel, and I'm able to successfully catch the Ice Punch. That is absolutely massive. My opponent can stay in here and rebank the energy if they want to. That's exactly what they're going to do, farm up so much energy and send in Poliwrath. Poliwrath will immediately be met with the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon will connect and gets the attack drop as well. That's quite nice. My opponent is going to fire off the Scald just before I make it to the Focus Blast. The Scald is going to connect. It does get the debuff, and I'm going to try and go for an undercharged Focus Blast and a farm down here. I did get the debuff, so going for an undercharge is a bit tough. And as you can see here, I just did not get the undercharge right. Trying to undercharge when you're debuffed is a bit awkward for sure. They're able to get a farm down. I send in the Decidueye. Let's see what my opponent has in the back. And it's Tentacruel, and this is just not a winnable situation for HISUIAN Decidueye. I'm going to be firing off the Aura Sphere. It does do slightly more damage. It is less efficient, but in this instance, I just don't have a win con. They can fire off energy here and comfortably take this win. Opponent is going to full send the Blizzard. You gotta love it there. They're saying, you know what? I have the energy. I'm going to use it. They send in the Alolan Sandslash, and Ice Punch will pick up the knockout. Did what I could there, but man, that lead is very tough. Speaking of better leads, we do see Shadow Dragonite into Greedent. Greedent farming up a ton of energy here. My goal is I would love to just throw one Dragon Breath and a Superpower, and then just look to try and make a catch onto the Registeel. They're throwing back-to-back. That works for me. I'm just going to go for the one Dragon Breath and the Superpower play, but the opponent makes the catch of a lifetime, catching a Superpower onto Annihilate. Oh man, that just absolutely hurts. What a beautiful play from my opponent. I send in HISUIAN Decidueye. The Aerial Ace and Psycho Cut are hitting for super effective damage, but again, the Psycho Cut doesn't really have much fast move pressure at all. They full send the Shadow Ball, so they are probably running Night Slash and Shadow Ball. I'm looking to farm up and fire off the Aerial Ace. This will comfortably pick up the knockout. Opponent is going to sacrifice the Annihilate as it's now done its job. In comes the Greedent. HISUIAN Decidueye looks like it did win charge attack priority. Aura Sphere, get that Greedent out of here, and in the back, it's a Spicy Mon, it's a Shadow Zapdos. I'm farming up, I'm unable to make the Aura Sphere as they will fire off the Drill Peck. I do have energy on the Dragonite, so this is still a very playable situation for me in the end game. A Zap Cannon debuff would probably seal it, but even so, with energy on the Dragonite and a little bit of fast move pressure available there, I should be in an okay spot. I'm firing off the Zap Cannon. The Zap Cannon is going to be shielded by my opponent, and I don't get the debuff. That is a bit unfortunate continuing to farm. They're going to go for the Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is going to do a decent amount of damage due to the fact that I didn't get the debuff. I'm going for Zap Cannon number 2. They're going to have to shield up this move or it will knock out, and the opponent lets it through. That was a tricky endgame there with energy loaded on the Registeel and the Dragonite. Moving into the next match, we have the Battle of Shadow Dragonite versus Shadow Poliwrath. I'm farming up here, and I'm firing off the Dragon Claw right before my opponent makes the Icy Wind, and they're going to commit the shield. Shadow Dragonite should be able to win the ones if you successfully grab a shield with the Dragon Claw and then connect with the Superpower. That is the matchup for the non-Shadow, but I don't know versus the Shadow Poliwrath, so here I decided to try and go for the Dragon Claw. And of course, it's not enough. I should have stuck with the matchup knowledge that I had, which is just Dragon Claw, grab the shield, and then Superpower. My opponent now going to send in a Zygarde, and this is tough. Honestly, this is probably where I want to see Zygarde on this team, as Registeel is able to apply some decent pressure with the Focus Blast, and I'm going to be able to survive an Earthquake. So they're going to fire off the Earthquake here, but Zygarde doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. So I'm able to withstand that damage and fire off the Focus Blast. The Focus Blast is going to be no-shielded by the opponent, understanding I have a Zygarde for a reason, and that's to absorb hits. I go for the Focus Blast, but I'm just not able to get there. They're going to go for the Crunch, and that will pick up the knockout. I'm going to send in HISUIAN Decidueye, as that is a complete wall to energy from the Zygarde. Zygarde is going to fire off a Crunch. That's perfectly fine by me. Let's see what they have in the back. It's a Tentacruel, and this game is unfortunately over. I can fire off the Aura Sphere, but this Aura Sphere is not going to do nearly enough. I send in the Dragonite. I'm going to try and throw it the last possible second. I end up not getting the move off, but either way, I don't see a path to victory because they can double up on Scalds before I'm able to make it to another Aura Sphere. So at this point, this is just game over for me, and Scald is going to knock out my Grass type. We see an absolutely nightmare lead in the next match here, leading Shadow Dragonite into Clefable. One of the tough things about running an ABA line is if you run into the Pokemon that you're weak to on the lead in the back, it's going to be an incredibly tough game. I save switch into the only counter, which is Registeel, and my opponent is going to send in Swampert. Swampert goes for the Earthquake. I commit the shield. My goal is to try and burn the switch clock and then potentially make a catch back onto the Dragonite to bait back out the Clefable. I'm able to grab a shield from my opponent. They're farming up energy with the Swampert, and I'm going to be committing the shield. And it's another Earthquake. That's big. I'm farming up with the Registeel, going for the Focus Blast before my opponent is able to make it to the Earthquake. The Focus Blast will be shielded. I'm over farming, going for the catch, but the opponent shows great patience, holding on to the energy, and now the Dragonite is answered by the Clefable. I fire off the Superpower. I have to keep in mind, they have a ton of energy loaded on that Swampert for later in the match. Clefable is going to go for the Meteor Mash and the Farm Down. They're exiting with energy. I don't wait the switch timer there, and that is very important. I need to bring in the Registeel right away while they're still switch locked to make sure that I can get rid of the Clefable and hope against all odds that HISUIAN Decidueye can sweep. This Zap Cannon is not going to pick up the knockout, but I will get the lock-on Farm Down. In the back, it's Annihilate. I'm going to be able to make it to the Zap Cannon. This will do some very nice damage. In hindsight, maybe I should have just instantly switched, but I wanted to fish for a debuff. My opponent is going to fire off energy here. They go for the Shadow Ball. That connects, and it's the combo play with the Swampert. Can I survive here? They go for the Earthquake. The Earthquake plus a Mud Shot is going to pick up the KO. If I had slightly better IVs, like let's say from a trade, maybe I could have hung on there, but unfortunately, I have Raid IVs, so I got knocked out. Hopping into the final match, we see a pretty awkward lead, Shadow Dragonite into Cresselia. I'm going to farm up, switch into the Registeel to catch this damage. This is another Pokemon that I am ABA weak to, so I'm just going to try and play it creatively. Leverage energy on my Dragonite and just do what I can. My opponent is going to rebank energy and send in the Swampert. Swampert will be hit with the Focus Blast, and as before, if I can preserve the Registeel, I would love to be able to. Tough call to make here. Are they going to bait? I shield, and a lot of Swamperts as of late have not been baiting in this matchup, so shielding Earthquakes as the Registeel honestly puts you in a pretty okay position to stall out the clock and switch for later. This is not enough for an Earthquake. They are only going for the Hydro Cannon here, so I am more than happy to no shield. Farm it up, switching into the Dragonite, and going for the Dragon Claw before my opponent is able to switch. The Dragon Claw is going to pick up the knockout, denying their energy. I'm expecting them to send in the Cresselia, but instead they send in Shadow Ampharos. I'm going to try and go for a Superpower on Charge Attack priority, but unfortunately my opponent does not throw right away. They end up shielding. They're going to look for a farm down here, but Shadow Dragonite able to withstand those Volt Switches despite being debuffed, pick up the knockout. And oh my goodness, Dragonite just put the team on his back there. In comes the Registeel, firing the Zap Cannon into the Cresselia. We do not get the debuff. I can just use Registeel to absorb energy from the Cresselia as they fire off the Moonblast, and then I should be able to close out the game with HISUIAN Decidueye. They're going to be firing off the Grass Knot, and now I can send in Decidueye. Even if they go for the Moonblast, I should be able to tank this. Granted, not super well, though. So I am going to be firing off the Aerial Ace. The Aerial Ace is going to connect. As you can see, that really does not do a lot of damage, and I'm going to no-shield. Let's see how much this does for science. Opponent goes for the Grass Knot bait, and they just stop tapping. They recognize that it is over, and I'm able to Psycho Cut down a Cresselia for the win. All in all, HISUIAN Decidueye is an interesting Pokemon that has some very cool coverage. As for its use is going to be extremely limited until potentially it can learn Frenzy Plant in the future, as the combination of Psycho Cut and Frenzy Plant I believe would make it the fastest Pokemon in Pokemon Go. When it comes to building up to a Frenzy Plant, I believe it would be straight 5 to a Frenzy Plant, which would be incredibly fast, and being able to replace Aerial Ace with a very strong Grass move, I think would be really nice for it. So, as of the current moment, it doesn't have a ton of use, but I would definitely hold on to one, as if it can learn Frenzy Plant in the future, this thing could look dramatically more interesting. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.